Cloud, and welcome to the 905er. The Niagara theme park Marineland was once a landmark in the 905. Its jingle of Everyone Loves Marineland no doubt still sparks nostalgia if you're over a certain age. In the last decade, however, the truth of what has been happening at the park in regards to its treatment of its animals has come to light and has recast the park in a different framework. Today, Marineland is synonymous with textbook animal cruelty. The wildlife in its possession abused and forced to live in abominable conditions. We've covered this before on the podcast. A link will be in the show notes. But if you go to the park now, you'll find it is closed, a shadow of its former self. The park as it stands now makes no money. However, it is still valuable. At least the land it sits on is, if it weren't for the animals still being held there. Which brings us to today's episode. Earlier last month, Marineland asked the federal government for permission to ship 30 beluga whales to China. The Carney government refused that request, resulting in Marineland pushing back, citing the deaths of the belugas will be on the federal government's hands. St. Catharines Liberal MP Chris Bittle took issue with that and wrote his response, citing that he agreed with the minister responsible decision on the matter and questioning whether or not the animals could even survive the trip to China in the first place. He went on to describe Marineland as a, quote, a stain on Niagara's reputation defined by decades of animal cruelty, end quote. With such choice words on the matter, I wanted to discuss this further with MP Bittle to understand why the federal government is pushing back on this matter and why he thinks Marineland is still trying to stop short of the well-being of the animals in its custody. Okay, thank you for Chris Bittle, MP for St. Catharines, federal MP, just to clarify, for coming on to the 905 to talk. Once again, Marineland, this is a story that we kind of touched upon in the past, and it's come up in recent news. MP Bittle, thank you very much for joining me today.
Happy to be here, and you can just call me Chris.
Well, my mom always said be polite, so
Well, we can be polite and still call me Chris. It's the House of Commons. We're commoners. We don't need
very good
titles. So
well, this is just a lowly podcast, but the matter of Marineland is one that's kind of been a bit of thorn in this part of the 905, and the fact of the park is clearly going out of business. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And the question is, what do we do with the remaining wildlife on the premises? The owner said they had found a organization, I'll put it, in China who would take the surviving belugas off their hands. You, meaning the federal government, just needed to authorize the sale and let it go through. The Liberal government said, no, we're not going to, which led to a lot of outrage. You wrote an opinion piece that basically defended the Liberal government's decision on this, and you posted to Twitter. Rather than paraphrase it, I'm going to ask for you to recite it in your own words on the record here for us all to know.
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but in terms of my thoughts on this, that Marineland has been a embarrassment for Niagara for a long time. It has been operating for 65 years, but societal views really started shifting. It's I don't know, funny is the wrong word to say, but funny to think about that with the movie Free Willy, documentaries like Blackfish, and more investigative reporting and more scientific understanding. We understand that putting a animal like this into captivity is cruel, and there's no sugarcoating that. People can search for the drone footage and see recent drone footage of what this looks like, what it looks like in other marine parks. And back in 2019, this government passed legislation to prevent this from happening again, from understanding that this is cruel and we don't want to see it happening again, which is where we lead into the issue of the export permits. And because under the legislation, you can't transport them. My belief is that if we have whales cruelly held in captivity, the solution to whales cruelly held in captivity is not shipping them thousands of miles to be held in captivity cruelly in a country that has no animal welfare laws. There are people out there promoting solutions. Most recently, I believe it was today, the government of Nova Scotia has authorized a sanctuary. And there is an issue of money with that sanctuary. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But the provincial government does have under its authority the Provincial Animal Welfare Services Act, or the PAWS Act, allows the government to put a lien onto the property to care for these animals. And that care can include sanctuaries or other operations. We've said in Canadian law that this is an unconscionable thing to do. I have a problem with us just covering our eyes and closing our ears and just hoping things go well in China, where there's other options and there is legislation available to ensure that taxpayers also aren't on the hook for this. This is a company that made a lot of money on cruelly housing animals, and this land is still valuable. That's the thing that Marineland doesn't want anyone to notice, that this is 1,000 acres of prime tourist land. Very valuable land, probably the most valuable undeveloped land in the Niagara region. Estimates are hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion, to sell this land. And there are many proponents, I have spoken to one of them, that wish to invest billions of dollars onto this property. So what this fundamentally becomes is now a land deal. If you get rid of those whales, the land is worth more. You can sell the land for more money. There's one group that came public that says they want to have a sanctuary on the site of the facility. I don't know if that works. I know that has gone to the Premier's office. I don't have any further details on the legitimacy and the ability to go through with that. That is an option on the table. But fundamentally, either sending them to China and selling them to China. It isn't this humanitarian decision by Marineland. It's to continue the commodification of these animals.
I do want to kind of touch upon that, and the owners of Marineland, and I guess their advocates, I'll say, have kind of come after you as saying, well, fine, if the government's not going to foot the cost of shipping these animals, they're just going to die in the tanks, and now it's on you. It's you, the government is the one who's doing this harm to these animals by letting them, like Marineland found the solution, and now you're just it's this bureaucratic rigmarole, and of course liberal red tape is holding up the solution for these animals to be housed elsewhere. And I just want to give you a chance to respond to that one.
Well, they found a solution. They didn't find a good solution, and they found the solution that'll put more money in their pockets in the easiest way possible, and hopefully out of sight, out of mind. Hopefully, a country with no animal welfare laws will treat them well. It's funny, we talk about red tape in terms of regulation, but I think this is something that Canadians support, and it speaks to the dying model that is Marineland, that Canadians are disgusted by whales in captivity. There are other options out there. There are provinces that have reached out. There are financial options, but again, this is one of those, comes down to you break it, you buy it. They've abused these animals. This has been a cruel system that has been in place. There is still money in this park and in this land that can pay for these sanctuaries that can exist, that can be developed. The government of Nova Scotia has stepped up to improve it. We need the provincial government to also do the right thing. I can appreciate a corporation does not want to pay tens of millions of dollars out of the potential sale of their land to transport whales or to come up with a different plan. But this notion that they are broke is a fiction. I'm sure if they came with their books, the corporation is not bringing in any money and there's only costs. but the land value is
So,
enormous. And so a solution that can find the right thing for these whales, that they are cared for, if they are just released in the wild, and I know I've talked to a lot of people who say, oh, we should do that. Unfortunately, they will starve to death. That is not a reasonable solution. But there is an option. There are sanctuaries available that can be explored out of the proceeds of the sale of this land. And we just need the government of Ontario to step up and do the right thing.
so I just want to clarify a point there. So if you said there's a facility or a site in Nova Scotia, possibly other provinces who would house these animals. But the cost, say, of transporting these animals to the said site, and maybe a deposit down, just hypothetically in terms of welfare or just the initial intake cost that might be associated with these animals. At no point would the federal government be spending tax dollars on that process if Marineland came to you and said, listen, we'll transport them to Nova Scotia, but you got to foot the cost of shipping them down to 401. Is that something that you would be entertained, or would you just say no, like, you, as you said, you broke it, you buy it?
I stand by that. Like, if this was a if this was a park that was truly bankrupt and truly had no assets, and then we would be having a different discussion in terms of what is the role of government in this place. Governments did allow this to happen municipally, provincially, and federally for 65 years. It existed as a legal entity under our laws. But fundamentally, the only way I could see taxpayers' dollars being used if, again, the province stepped up and put a lien on this property, I could see us or the province upfronting the costs to be repaid back through a lien once the property is sold. And there are plenty of companies looking to invest in this property. It is a desirable piece of land at a premium price, and it still leaves whoever the shareholders are of this corporation a lot of money. And again, everyone wants more, and you want to get the best price out of that land. And you're right, transporting these whales either up the 401, or whether it's Nova Scotia, or I don't even know how you pack them up and send them to China, which is the question of whether these animals can survive a trip that far is beyond my expertise, but people have raised questions about that. There is money in this park, and there's still money in this park to do that and still provide a good profit for the shareholders at the end of the day, which I can appreciate they don't want. But again, you break it, you buy it. And they have created this system, commodified these whales, and now have to deal with the consequences.
Well, like, I guess I'll try and play devil's advocate here, for the sake of it. But I mean, my argument would be the land is now worthless, though, because there's animals there. Somebody buys the land for whatever purpose, whether to turn into a development, housing, business, whatever you want to do with it. I don't know. The animals are still there, and that is a huge disincentive for any interested party. Say, well, I'll buy the land, buy it as is. That's a big question. So the argument is, well, yeah, the land is only worth as you said, billions of dollars, as long as the animals aren't there. As long as the animals are there, it's a kind of I almost a catch-22 situation here. And I'm just wondering, how do you square that away? Because yeah, you might make the money back off the sale of the land, but you're going to be out of pocket, a couple million, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars for the time being.
Yeah, and understandably, if we put the lien on the property, again, that allows for government to step in, understanding that we will be paid back for the cost of the care of the animals. This is what the PAWS Act was designed for. Probably never thinking about a situation at this scale, probably thinking about a roadside zoo or something much smaller, but the same applies here, that government can step in and provide these upfront costs. We do have the capacity to do that, understanding that we would be reimbursed and that the land would be cleared. Again, there is one proponent. I don't know the details. I'm sure they are offering in to be fair to you, I'm sure they're offering a lower price to, we'll buy the land, have a sanctuary for the whales. I'm sure they're offering less for the land than other entities are, which may be why this isn't a desirable purchase for Marineland. But there is someone out there willing to do that, also invest $6 billion on the property, which I was impressed at. But I know there's other developers, having talked to the mayor of Niagara Falls, there are other developers who are keenly interested in this to invest substantially in this land. So it's not a random piece of land in the middle of nowhere somewhere in Ontario. This is prime tourist land that we know has a substantial value that we won't lose money, so to speak, should the province of Ontario step forward, lean the land, and do the right thing and ensure the best care for these animals.
Have you? I know you're at the federal level, but federal and provincial governments get together and do all sorts of wonderful things. In this situation, has there been any talk of moving ahead, as you said, with the lean and kind of stepping in just to facilitate this transition? Only because these animals have been in the state for years now. I'm going to say almost decades as it's come out. I don't know what the urgency is of the ownership, because my understanding is, from our previous episode, the ownership is now with the widow of the owner has passed away, and it's now just a circle of trustees or shareholders that now run the corporation that owns the land. And then now I'm wondering, is there? I don't think there's an urgency there necessarily to get this done, sell the land, make the profit, walk away. So this is a long-winded way of me asking, like, are you willing to step in, talk with the premier's office or the relevant minister, provincial minister, say, let's work something. Let's, to quote The Godfather, make them an offer that they cannot refuse, and just do something to save the welfare of these animals.
Well, I know there's been basic discussions. I am member of parliament. I'm not in the cabinet or in these higher level discussions. I know there have been, in speaking to the minister and the prime minister's office, I think there have been some low level discussions between the two levels of government, but I don't know that there has been much in the way of movement going forward. It's hard to tell. I know, again, I'm sure our government would be willing to work with whatever government wants to step up. Right now, Nova Scotia has approved the sanctuary, so there is a path forward. And I'm sure there would be a willingness to discuss how do we get there. From my standpoint, again, like for a company, I'm sure its books say, and where the urgency comes in is that, well, look, we ran out of money. We can show you the books, but everyone knows like what your assets are is a completely another story. And so I don't accept their playing poor act that they've been portraying, and that this is as dire as they're putting it out there. There is a path forward. There is a way to do this. My hope that Marineland would do it of their own accord. But at this point, especially with the family no longer involved, I don't think they care about the PR ramifications of either whales dying, whales being sold, or whales being mistreated in China. They just want to receive the most amount of money for the piece of land, which is their right as the owner. But at the same time, I think we have to right the wrong that is the care for these animals.
I guess that listeners might be sitting there, and we're thinking of the speed at which government works. I'm sure you as a backbench MP probably know this better than any of us. The speed at which government works when you look at a problem, and that, I guess, those of us who don't want to see these animals suffer anymore and want to see them live with the remainder of their lives in best comfort, know there's a ticking clock here. Like they are not going to live forever. What I guess how do we solve this then? Let the fire underneath the interested parties' butts, so to speak, So the wheels start moving, and we just don't stand. We're not just standing in the room staring at each other, saying, "Well, who goes first?" Right?
And yeah, you're absolutely right. And sometimes it seems like government's an unwieldy battleship that it takes a long time to steer it even a little bit. But when we're dealing with things like this that tug at the emotional heartstrings of people, government can move sometimes quicker than you think. I think the key is, and this is with any case, is let the appropriate level of government know if you want to call your member of parliament, great, but like calling your member of provincial parliament is key because the legislation is there. It doesn't, if this required change to legislation, is like, oh, it's probably going to take a year or two if we're being honest. But if the legislation already exists within the Pause Act, let your member of provincial parliament know and apply that pressure. So um, every level of government knows that it's important to constituents because no one wants to see these whales die. People want to see them comfortable. Even the people have reached out and said, why don't you just send them to China? There is, from a place of concern, that in a lot of people's mind, well, better a terrible life in China than no life at all. But like that's only an option if we accept the notion that the only option that exists is a amusement park in China. There are other options available, and we can expand on that and look at other things as well. The
Well,
common denominator will be money, which we've discussed, and the options of getting that, and it'll become where government is comfortable to intervene and intervene under the powers that exist to them.
it's kind of a damning indictment of us as a society. If we're like, well, the only option is a horrible life in China, but we can't find a decent life in Canada for them. I'm, you know, I know you're the politician. You can't say that, but I will because I'm a lowly podcaster. But I mean that does say something like I like to think that we can achieve great things in Canada. We can provide the welfare of animals in distress, a decent, the remainder of their days in dignity, as how I'd phrase it.
Well, it's funny. I just texted a reporter before unrelated to this issue. I texted a reporter, "Oh, I'm being optimistic on this thing. I'm not usually that type of person, but if we look at where we've come, a week ago, we would have said, well, the Nova Scotia sanctuary option wasn't an option to begin with, which was something that Marineland was keen to tell us. As of today, that option exists. It's not available at the moment for all the whales that exist, but there's an option for 10 whales to live their lives there. I don't know what deal at the moment. I don't know what overtures have been public or not. I know the minister has heard from other interested parties within the country, but again, it'll become how do we fund it? And um, to a T, people want to see us provide care and a safe outcome for these whales. That is clearly what I hear. That's clearly what we see. And there may be a difference of where we send them or how we do it. That is a unifying thing that can move government faster than I think normally can. Because again, a few days ago, that whale sanctuary was never going to happen in Nova Scotia. But with the work and pressure from especially animal welfare groups, you can see governments move a lot quicker than you may not see on a lot of other issues.
The question I can tell my listeners are going to be asking me to ask you on this after all that is, okay, if it's a matter of putting pressure or just political, I guess, pressure on the provincial parties, have you reached out to your provincial counterpart in St. Catharines, who I believe is Paul Calandra? You can correct me if I'm wrong. No,
No, I have Jenny Stevens in St. Catharines.
that's no.
I've talked
Then I was mistaken. Sorry.
That's okay. It's all good. I've talked to Jenny Stevens, who's the MPP for St. Catharines, and Wayne Gates, who's the member of provincial parliament
Right.
for the riding next door, which is Niagara Falls. And again, they have concerns and have expressed similar concerns about the government acting to
Can I
move forward. Yeah,
can I just say
sure,
something?
sure.
How much of a win would this be if you had a Liberal MP, an NDP MPP, and a Progressive Conservative MPP, all three parties coming together to solve this issue?
it's
Like I'm
yeah,
just saying, like
no,
that is a
absolutely.
pretty in this day in this climate.
No one, at the end of the day, no one cares. No one cares about the win, who's getting the win. I don't, at the end of the day, I don't need a win on this. I just want to see these whales cared for. And I'm happy to point to the legal frameworks that exist. If there is a requirement that the federal government needs to step up within the frameworks that I've discussed, I'm happy to go to bat. I'm happy to meet with, as I've met with Jenny and Wayne, I'm happy to meet with whomever to discuss this. And I hope those discussions are taking place at the ministerial level and between PMO and the Premier's office. Um, I'm happy to facilitate that. I'm always happy to work across party lines. I know at this time it seems impossible. That can never happen. Through 10 years in federal government, I've been surprised at many of the deals that we've been able to accomplish with the Ford government. And this is just another one of those things that I think if we work together, roll up our sleeves, the solutions are there, the levers are there to do it. It doesn't take any legislation, which makes this a great deal easier.
Well, as they'll say in Poli Sci 101, politics is the art of the possible. So we shall wait with bated breath and see what happens next. We all hope that there's a positive outcome of this story and that those animals find a good home, ideally still here in Canada or in a comparable country. But thank you very much, MP Chris Bittle from St. Catharines, for coming on at the end of your day. I'm thankful that you managed to fit me in your busy schedule. But thank you very much, and we'll keep an eye on this story as it unfolds.
My pleasure. Happy to talk. Thanks, Joel.